voice sounds a little more muffled today. Upper respiratory thing going on. Not fun. But otherwise, we're doing great, Terry.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've had ourselves a week of weather since the last time we have talked. We had our record-breaking snowstorm for November. Then we had another little system behind that dumped a couple, 3 inches in southeastern Iowa. And then, of course, the record cold that just smashed the area this morning. Some places in northwest Iowa went down to 19 degrees below zero. And Cedar Rapids in my area hit minus 11 this morning. So that is the earliest for double-digit cold in Cedar Rapids since 1891, which I find a pretty amazing statistic.
Yikes! I don't miss that. I missed the snow. The picture of the
Yes.
snow had me very jealous. But once it
Uh,
snows, get that out of here. Get the cold out of here and bring the warmth back. Cause yeah, I don't miss that. You can see right now you're looking at current temperatures across the Midwest, and it's already we're recovering a bit. In fact, for some areas, this is your high of the day in some spots
right.
behind the ridge axis. I mean, you got 9 in Cedar Rapids, 2 in Dubuque. The Quad Cities sitting at a balmy 4 degrees. Still some
Yep.
sub-zero temperatures in northern Illinois. You can see Ottawa near 5, just north of Peoria at 1 below zero still. So there's definitely a lot of cold air in place with that snowpack on the ground that we just had to go through.
Yeah, just having that icy base there just makes all the difference in the world. And the fortunate thing for us here is, of course, it was just a really quick shot, and it's going to be out of here by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon. Then, and we'll see a nice warm up back into the upper 20s to near 30 degrees, maybe 32 in the far south. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we wanted to step on into our next weather system for the weekend, which appears to be an accumulating snow once again. I think several inches looks likely, and then after that, things get really interesting and kind of wonky next week, and we'll touch on.
Wonky is a great way to
Oh,
put it. Here's your
yeah,
clipper. We'll start off with this little guy. We've been talking about it on tswells.com, little active pattern we're kind of stepping into for the next couple of days, and you can see it rolling on through here on the Euro. This will be kicking in likely late Saturday afternoon for the area and continue to very early Sunday morning. Clipper system, it's quick moving, but it's also very dry, so it'll hit pretty hard depending on where exactly that storm track ends up.
right. And it looks like moisture wise, there might be 2/10 to 4/10 of an inch max out of this system, which is far, far less than last weekend's storm. However, snow ratios should be pretty high, so we think we'll get a fairly fluffy accumulation out of it. And at this point, it seems like 2 to 4 inches is pretty solid, and maybe as much as 5 in the narrow bands wherever the axis of that low pressure tracks. So you kind of got that laid out there. You can see the low looks like it comes out of southeast Nebraska and then dives a little bit southeast. So that's going to be really important as to who gets into the heavier snow in our area. Just a little further northeast or southwest could make a difference of a couple inches easy.
These clippers are always such a challenge too, because usually on the southern side of these clippers, you have such a tight gradient of like higher
Mm-hmm.
end snow and virtually nothing. So it's
Yeah.
that little track of wherever the storm is, days in advance means so much. But really, again, consistency has been pretty darn good. We'll have to pay for this probably eventually, but at least for now, the consistency with the models has been pretty good with this system as it was for the past weekend system too.
Yeah, the GFS finally got on board with a little further northeast track. That had been kind of keeping everything well west and south of us, but today everything seems to have synced up pretty well, and now we're coming into pretty good consensus on where this will all track. And I think everybody's going to get in on snow. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of breaking down that fine line there, and that's something we probably won't be able to do entirely until tomorrow. But we're definitely getting in the right direction on that. I don't see a lot of wind with this thing. I don't see it being a huge disruptor since it's going to be overnight on Saturday night and should be out pretty early on Sunday. But it does involve some shoveling, guaranteed you on that.
I think a lot of kids are probably annoyed that once again no snow day. It hits hitting on a weekend again. It's two for two
Yeah.
so far. That we might break that later in the week, but we'll see. For now, it doesn't look too good for any snow days. Although they do like virtual
Yeah,
learning days now. Where's the fun in that? There's a lot of that going on these days. You don't get a true snow day anymore in some
that's
spots.
a crusher. Of course, we didn't have snow days when I was a kid anyway. That was
That's
so
true.
long ago that, you found a way to get there. That's the way it was.
Uphill both
And
ways.
yeah, oh gosh, it was long. Yeah, that 5 mile walk was just a crusher, especially it was 20 below. But look at me now. Still kicking anyway. All
Here's kind
right.
of your overall pattern.
Yeah.
It's an active pattern. We actually talked about this last week. How when we were looking at the 500 millibar pattern, it didn't make sense to us in the moment. It felt like that storm track was too far east, and we both kind of really much agreed on that. And we looked at the Euro, and it was like, what? Why? What are we doing here? I think we both kind of discussed that once the snowpack from our weekend system got better analyzed, it would probably start handling what we think is going to happen. And we kind of did see that big shift. You can kind of see that storm track setting right up here from like Alberta through the upper Great Lakes, through Midwest, and into the Northeast. And this is kind of what we expected to kind of happen. At the time, that storm track was much further east. So this looks a little bit
Yeah.
more active and bouts of cold for us going forward here.
Right. And you showed really well there up in Alberta. That's what they used to call these things when I was younger, Alberta Clippers, because that's where they generate up there in that part of the country. And then the jet stream just takes them on southeast. But they move quickly and they don't have a lot of moisture. You can see the Gulf of Mexico, which are a moisture source there, is just pretty well shut down. So they've got some decent dynamics, but because they move so fast, most of the snow is going to come in about a 6 hour period and slide on out here, maybe 8 hours, something 6 to 8, something like that. However, these things can come on pretty regular basis as well. And there's one there, there's another behind that, and then another behind that. And you can kind of see those little green blobs whipping on by. So each and every one of those usually warms things up a little bit. And then behind the system, you're going to get a surge of colder northwest winds and temperatures drop. But I think one thing that we've noticed, Nick, is that you can see that little ridge, that area of orange out there in the Central Rockies. That appears early next week to start shifting further northeast. And it might take the Clipper track completely out of our area and push more up into Minnesota and Wisconsin. What's your thoughts?
It's a fascinating pattern. It's a quick, you just start getting into the wintry pattern and then just shut off. We
Yeah.
were kind of breaking that down kind of before the video here that, certain aspects of the upper air pattern, it's just a little confusing. It's a little weird. Um, we're trying to figure out exactly what may or may not be kind of pinning this down and indicating this. I know the waters in the Eastern Pacific are incredibly warm compared to seasonal norms, and so that's likely having some impact. You're kind of getting that zonal flow coming in off the water that's kind of adding some heat up here that's kind of helping the ridging. I would guess that's what's going to happen here. um, I, I,
Yeah.
I think this happens to an extent. I just don't. The Euro just bakes it all the way through like mid late December. That's when I start getting a little more unsure exactly how
Yeah.
that's going to pan out.
Can you pop it out to the North America view a little
Yeah,
bit more? I just feel it might be a little easier to visualize. All right. So there you can see this must be pretty close to time
for right
here.
now, yeah.
Yeah. And you can see that strong northwest flow there, and that ridge is over the west. Where his cursor is out over the Pacific, that's where the ridge is actually. And the jet stream then goes up and over the top of that and dives into the central United States. So that's where we're getting our cold air and our clippers to come from. But as you advance this forward, watch what happens to the ridge. It gets kind of knocked down, and you see that low pressure up over Alaska that's spinning around there. Circulation around that starts to set up a really strong zonal flow there across the northern tier of the United States. And I really think then they're going to get a lot of damming of cold air in southern Canada, which, in my opinion, sets the stage for an Arctic outbreak somewhere. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen that happen yet, but the ridge definitely is coming in here for a while. I do feel we could get into the 30s, maybe have a day in the 40s. It's possible. I don't think it's going to last very long before there's going to be another break in this whole pattern, and we'll start to see the whole thing just crash in on itself. And the next thing you know, it's cold again.
So that was one thing that we've been kind of missing so far this winter is the snowpack in southern Canada. That's been really missing, and so it's not modifying the air that's coming in overhead. You're not getting that modification to colder air. So if you do kind of get, I'm dying over here. When you kind of get the storm pattern right here, riding over the ridge, you're going to start getting that the snowmakers kind of clipping too, and they might not be particularly strong, but a few inches here, a few inches here, start
Hmm.
building up that snowpack, and then yeah, I think you're 100% right that at some point when this pattern finally breaks down, it will probably be pretty fantastic when it does kind of an epic scale. I don't think it'll be kind of a meandering to cooler. It'll probably be
Yeah,
a crashing pattern.
right. And big Canadian high pressure is very likely to settle over the upper Midwest somewhere. And where it all ends up is difficult to say because it will determine where the storm track is, what kind of snow system you have or you don't have. Sometimes you get in the cold air so deep it isn't going to even happen. All the clippers or the low pressures go well to the south of you. I still think though that there's some hope here that if you're a snow lover, we can still get into another good period of snow or two before this whole month is over with. But I think we're going to go into a bit of a break there somewhere around the middle of the month. And then by Christmas again, I would expect things to collapse and we get back into this more energetic flow. But one thing that I am really mystified about is the Madden-Julian oscillation. We talked about this in one of our other videos. If you look at this, you can certainly see, this is the Euro that you're pointing out here, that it is going out of 7 pretty quickly, and then it goes into phase 8. 7 and 8 in December are known cold phases, flat out. That's what they analog to. And that gets into 8 and then just kind of lollygags around there right on through the 2nd of January. To me, that signals cold weather. Now, the GEFS extended kind of brings it back into 7, but even 7 is a cold phase in December. So both of them would indicate a colder pattern. And here's your phase diagram here for temperatures. And there's 7 and 8 that Nick is pointing out there. So what the heck? Why is that ridge building over the central United States? We're mystified a little by that because let's just go down to phase 3 or 4 down there and just point that. That's what a ridge typically does. See how the above normal temperatures would be? So that contradicts what we're seeing with the MJO. And that's really got me confused, to be quite honest.
It seems like it's part of it's like it's almost like it's trying to go to almost like neutral-ish, like very low amplification, and it doesn't
Yeah.
know what to do with the pattern. And then you kind of see like it kind of kicks back out in deeper
Yeah,
into 8
it
there.
does.
And so that's
Goes back out.
probably when we start seeing that, like mid to late December, it should get more
Right.
active and colder again. That's kind of what I'm thinking is happening. I think the MJO has the overall idea here. It's just,
Hmm.
at first glance, it looks really cold, and then you're like, well, maybe not. I don't know.
Right. And we do have a La Nina in effect. And so that, is tied to the ocean temperatures out in the tropical Pacific. And in a typical winter, that gets a pretty good flow across the northern tier of the United States. You get these buckles that come from time to time, but it can also moderate a lot. It's the northern tier of the United States that typically has the harsh winter when you have a decently strong La Nina. So it may be that that's also playing a role in this as well. I'm pretty sure that it is, to be quite honest with you. But
Hmm.
hard to measure that, especially in today's world. Things have changed a lot since some of these analogs were made over the last 15 to 20 years.
We talked about it a little bit. Here's your anomalies in the Eastern Pacific, and I think this is definitely throwing a bit of a curveball into some of these forecasts. You can obviously see as the La Nina conditions down here, El Nino, La Nina
Yep.
3-4 is right about here, and so that's obviously locked in. You got nice anomalies there that all tracks, but it's this big old warm blob here across like the Central Pacific that's just very, very unusual, and yeah, it's quite different. And also, you notice the Gulf here is so warm,
Yeah.
and so if you ever do
Yeah.
get a nice true winter storm, kind of which we had this past weekend, there's a reason it likely broke a lot of records in places for snowiest November storm or earliest this and earliest that. It's because it's a
Yep.
more traditional storm. It rolled in across the central U.S. and was able to tap into a lot of the Gulf energy. And the Gulf is very warm, which means you can evaporate more moisture. So we're dealing
Yeah.
with all these weird water temperatures that I think are also fascinatingly affecting our weather a lot here.
Most certainly. There's definitely a lot of latent heat energy though there in the Gulf of Mexico. If you could just get something to pop there. We just got to get the trough back out to where we can get the cold air and still get something to come in from the southwest. That's going to be the trick for us. But I don't think this is going to be an easy winter in any stretch of the imagination. And I think we'll pop back into much colder conditions after whatever happens with this warm up somewhere in the next 7 to 8 days. So that's kind of the way I feel about that.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. There's again your
yeah.
warm up.
Do you have any questions by chance, Nick? Is anybody logged in here? We got any sort of?
There really hasn't been a lot of questions popping in. So if you
No.
guys do have questions, whether about the local weather, the system coming in this weekend, longer range pattern, we're happy to answer them. We
Yeah.
did have one set from Danielle saying, I'm going to be driving back from Kansas City on Sunday. What time Sunday will it be done? Pretty early, it seems. I'll
Hmm.
go back to the Euro. I'll go back to the Euro here because I think the Euro is handling it better. Shocker.
Right.
And you can kind of
And it
see.
probably won't be anything down in Kansas City at all. You'd
Mhm.
have to get up into Iowa before you even find any issues.
Yeah, because here is midnight, so Sunday morning at midnight, and you can see by here's noon Sunday, it's already gone. Iowa DOT, they're rock stars in the interstates. Those roads will be pretty clear. It's also going to be a pretty powdery, fluffier, lighter snow. That's much easier to plow on the roads.
Yeah.
So I think it will be slick, most likely coming back if you're coming back from Kansas City to like Iowa, but you probably will not be driving through actual snow at the time. So we got Dan watching from Davenport. Hello, sir.
Yo, Dan.
Joseph, what's the weekend looking like in the Muscatine area? You kind of see the same
Well,
idea here.
to be quite honest with you, I don't see any part of the region that isn't going to see pretty much the same type weather. Once again, everybody's going to get snow out of this. It's just a matter of one place getting maybe 1 or 2 more inches than another. But late Saturday night and Sunday, that's when your issue is going to happen with the snow. And then by that time Sunday, it moves on out. It probably cool down a little bit, but it should pop right back up on the next clipper Monday or Tuesday as that one rolls on across Minnesota and Wisconsin, maybe just catches northeastern Iowa. But that's kind of the latest trend on that. And so that's why we're thinking there's going to be that period next week where we get a little more ridging down here, and our southern counties could warm up in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But with that snow on the ground, that's going to be a bit of a detriment to much warmer temperatures. If we didn't have that, now we could probably get some 50s. It's possible.
Luke is asking about
Um,
the snow ratios here this week, and I think it's a good time to actually look at some of what the models are showing. I don't like showing model output too much, but I think we're close enough where it starts getting a little bit more reliable. And
yeah,
to put some context here, this is a European forecast. This is what we call the 10 to 1. So this is your very basic snowfall forecast. This assumes 1 inch of liquid water equals 10 inches of snow. It's a very rough calculation. And you'll see across Iowa, it's showing, about 4 to 5 inches of snow in spots. And that's, I think, in the ballpark of what we can kind of expect with this. Maybe some spots a little bit higher than that. But if you run what we call the Kachera method, we can calculate the snow ratios. And what you see is more like double that amount. So instead of 10 to 1, it's probably pushing closer to 15 to 1 to 20 to 1 because the cold air in place, Terry.
absolutely. And so, it's like you said, then instead of getting an inch of snow, you get an inch and a half or two. And then if you're getting four, well, then all of a sudden you're up to 6.5 or 7 inches, something like that. So, yes, in this particular case, whatever falls is going to be fluffier, and particularly the further north you go. But the better moisture appears to be in our southwestern county, southwest half of the area. So it may end up there's not a whole lot of difference between the amounts based on those two issues, if that makes any sense. Am I on that one okay, Nick?
Yeah, I think so. You can kind of see it pretty well here too. What
Okay.
the probability is, where like the
Yeah,
probabilities of at least 2 inches of snow. The system kind of loses some of that moisture as it approaches our area. As kind of Terry was mentioning, that moisture is kind of better out this direction, and so the probabilities are higher for like western central Iowa of higher snow totals. But I think we will still get in some here locally. I just don't think they're going to be probably as high as say central Iowa and things like that.
it sort of seems like the energy gets sheared out.
Mm-hmm.
There really isn't what I would call fantastic upper air support with this system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to me, that is one thing I'd be a little bit concerned about. as a negative for snow, but both models now, the major models are starting to all get into the whole fray of that. And even now we're getting to the point where we can use CAMs, convective available producing models. And so those sometimes when we get down to the event are actually even better. The HER was great last weekend.
Hmm.
That runs every single hour, the HRRR, the RAP, some people call it, whatever. And you can just boink, boink, boink. And oh well, we got 2 more inches to go or 3 more inches to go. And that was a really helpful tool in last weekend's snow when it started happening in particular.
Yeah, it was a little scary early, but I think it ended up in the end. There was kind of some dry air that started kind of pushing to southern Iowa, and I'm like, oh, that could be a problem. And it worked itself out. We got there eventually. So,
We
uh,
did, but it was unique in the sense that the 850 millibar low came across southern Iowa, and that one we talked about that the other last time we did a video, that is, and how that might be a player. So there was a warm advection surge that got a lot of snow down in southern Iowa the first round, not as much to the north, and then later the 850 low came along and kind of cut the southern part out of the area, but then this deformation band formed in the northwest, and that's how where I'm at anyway. We ended up with 14 inches of snow here. Most of that came late Saturday afternoon and evening, which was really beautiful. I was about crying out there. Still makes me cry thinking about it.
I was watching some of the Iowa DOT cameras in solidarity. It's just while I was
Yes.
sitting in the mid 80s here in Florida. Erica, hello from North Liberty. How is Stormy? Stormy's great. He's been a very good boy. He's not barked yet this video. I think last time he barked once.
No.
He's been a good dude this time.
Yeah.
We got. Did I miss any forecast accumulation much for Cedar Rapids? Probably a little early to go too much in detail, but I think generally speaking, a lot of the area, probably what you say, like 2 to 4 inches, seems pretty reasonable for
Yeah.
much of
I,
the area.
I think Cedar Rapids actually looks pretty good for 3, 4,
Hmm.
conceivably 5 inches with the snow ratios like they
Hmm.
are. If everything holds as we are right now. But yeah, I think you're solid for 2 to 4 in Cedar Rapids. That looks very good and probably extends on down to the Quad Cities from there, kind of on that line from northwestern Iowa down to say Waterloo and Cedar Rapids and down to the Quad Cities. That might be the main axis, pretty close to that, where that dark blue is on your graphic there.
That would be
Yep.
ideal for a lot of people,
Yeah,
or
that
or
goes.
not ideal, depending on your outlook.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Uh,
Um, something else too that people might not have thought about, but when I was shoveling the snow, I was surprised at just how warm the ground was still around here. And it was melting from the bottom up. And the snow is really compacted now, not only from the top, but from the bottom where that melting was taking place. My driveway, man, I could eat off that. It was nice and clean after everything. I scooped it and melted right off, slick as a whistle. Loved it.
I'd
Yeah.
say going even back to this, your current temperatures in the U.S. That speaks to this too. I mean, you think about that fresh snow we just had, very strong cold front that came through, and then clear skies and calm nights. I think Chicago Midway only got down to like 10 degrees last night. Some of the models was indicating closer to like 5 or 10 degrees below zero. But I think just that the ground was just too warm still. I think we're too early season for these really cold temperatures to show up. Cedar Rapids always somehow finds a way to overperform, but I think
Yeah.
a lot of the area I think escaped from what could have been a
And
much colder morning.
yes, even Waterloo was 15 below, and Northwest Iowa was minus 19. But I really do believe another issue was once you got to the Mississippi East, the winds held up a little bit last night, and that made a difference. Also, here in Dubuque, we got to -7, but from points here down along the river, we didn't seem as cold as we could have been. And I actually think the river might have played a little bit of a factor in that because it's still relatively warm. Although I am seeing plenty of ice out there now, it's not very thick, but in the shallower areas, we are getting some ice.
A little cloud cover coming in kind of right now over the region's going to kind of help you out a little bit tonight too from keeping
Huge,
what could have been much colder. As you
right?
also mentioned, I can put on some winds here. You can see the southerly winds have
Yeah,
also returned here across
that's the
Nebraska,
key.
Iowa. So this wind is helping you
We're
out
gonna,
too.
yeah, warmer, rising temperatures all night tonight, probably slowly. and that ought to get us back to the upper 20s to low 30s. But you can also see northwest, there's a little trough there, and that's what's going to come on through tomorrow night and then stall out in southern Iowa, and that'll be the path then that the Clipper takes. So all of these things work together in tandem. It's fascinating when you know what's happening, you care about it, like we do. But
A little bit.
that's essentially how it works.
Luke is asking about any concerns with dry air. It seems like the Clippers can have quite a bit on the front end. Clippers, by kind of their nature, are pretty moisture starved usually anyway. They make up for it because it's so cold typically that it's able to squeeze out all this extra moisture and make the snow so much fluffier. So dry air always kind of a concern with these Clippers, but I think there should be enough to get our snow going this time around. Not too worried about that.
It's
Brian
interesting
from
too.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it, south of the low, there's hardly any precipitation at all. Dynamically, it's really driven north and northeast of the surface low where that actually tracks. And so you can get that 2/10 to 4/10 north, but if you look further south of the low, very little down that way. And that's just the structure of these systems. Normally, the good snow systems that we get, there's going to be a lot of precipitation south, north, east, west. The only problem is if the low goes right over you, then you get the dry slot. That's a devastating place to be if you want precipitation,
Sharp
especially,
cutoff.
yeah.
Mike is asking about is it looking good for a white Christmas this year? That's always a tough question, especially lately. It's getting harder and harder to get these white Christmases this time of year. I'll
But
say that much.
yes, it's like about, I think the last, what was I did something on this not too long ago, and it was like, it's down to like 25% in the last 14 or 15 years around eastern Iowa. Used to be closer to 40 to 50 in most areas, not so much in southeastern Iowa, but it has significantly gone down in the last 10 years, majorly. Now this year, dang, if we don't do it, that's going to be a major disaster. That ridge is the only thing there that I'm worried about. Yes. We don't want that to last very long. If that sits over you for a week, that's a Chinook that will chomp, chomp, chomp. And then we're going to have to get some more snow somewhere before Christmas.
It might not even be
That's my
a
night.
I said it might not even be a brown Christmas. It's more like a green Christmas. It might warm up enough to kind of get the grass germinating
Oh,
again.
geez, don't even talk like that, there, Nick. That's slap you in the face. That's no good. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yep.
here's your
So,
upper air pattern. Again, we were kind of talking about this earlier in the video. You can kind of see Big Ol' Ridge likely takes over kind of mid-December, kind of shuts the winter off. What happens after that, heading to Christmas, as Terry's kind of alluding to, that's when it gets maybe a little bit more interesting. Also a little unknown. The signals are a little washed out at the
right.
extended range.
Not as clear as I would like to be. And I really truly thought when we talked the last week that we'd have a better handle on the longer range pattern right now. But this is kind of a fly in the ointment here, what happens in the next week. So we'll have to keep a tab on that and let you know later on how it all works out here. But I don't think there's a whole lot more that we can discuss on this particular issue, Nick. There's a little warm up coming, tolerable, not exactly normal, but just a little bit below. Then the snow, and then probably a little bit warmer earlier next week after we get that out of here on Sunday morning.
Good times. So obviously you can get the latest
All
weather
right.
forecast for the region. Tswails.com. Every day, new blog post written by one of us. So would love
Yep.
to have you learn. We put a lot of effort into that. There's a lot of stuff in there. So feel free
Yes.
to check it out.
Yes, absolutely. And Nick, I know you got your own sites and you got some pretty unique things on there with your space weather ventures and your own other storm tracking travel, picking up tornadoes and things like that. So what are your sites that people
Yeah,
could look at?
MidwestWeatherCenter.com is my website. It's more so just kind of a place where I put a bunch of stuff, so photos, some of the research I'm doing and stuff like that. Most of the content I make is on the YouTube side of things. I'm actually streaming there right now, simulcasting on YouTube. Meteorologist Nick Stewart over on YouTube. A lot of storm chasing content there, and coming up within the next probably 2 weeks, Live Life and Chase 2025, my annual storm chasing recap video. So we'll be getting that going, edited together, and uploaded here pretty soon.
Always good stuff. I highly recommend it. If you're into weather at all, Nick has a great product and he's won all kinds of awards, Emmys, et cetera, et cetera. He's a first-notch meteorologist, and we are absolutely thrilled to have him here at tswells.com. All right, then. I
There
guess
you go.
we'll sign off and hope to see you again soon.